I'm continuing my powder coating. I have just 3 parts that are completely done. It's hard to get the powder into some of the acute angles here, so I'm going back and hot flocking to get the powder into the crevices. And so a lot of the parts I've done, I have to go back and heat up again, powder coat them, heat them one more time, and then finally I have them done. This is my pile of parts to check through and probably touch up with a hot flock operation, especially like in here. Couldn't get the powder down into there, that recess very well. So I have some cooking now, and hopefully in a day or two I can get through all these. Meanwhile, I started working on the differential. A little worried. I took it apart and this cotter key was just a wire in there, and then I made a bracket with 2 holes to put bolts in here to hold it. It's also my Honda timing chain timing replacement tool. I welded up a nut with 6 pieces of sheet metal or strap metal there to hold the engine. But so I have these 2 holes in the end of it to hold the differential, and turns out I didn't even need that. I could have taken this off with my fingers, and I think it's supposed to be at 100 foot-pounds or so. So I'm a little nervous about that, although the differential seems tight when I turn it. But the seal is leaking, so I have to take it off and put a new seal in. Unfortunately, this is probably why the seal is leaking. It's not really a ridge I can catch with my fingernail, but you can definitely feel a depression there as you run your finger across it. So it's not super sharp, but it's there. So I either need to put a sleeve on there or possibly get a new whole flange piece here. Took this mounting bracket off the differential, just 4 bolts with the internal star washers. Now I have to get the seal out. Here's a better look at the seal, cleaned up a little bit. Looks like it's basically flush with this lip here, so I know how to put it back in. I finally got this seal to come out. I tried a few things. I tried the seal puller, but it doesn't, you can't pry against anything solid, so that didn't really work. I tried drilling holes and putting sheet metal screws in, and then pulling them out against this head of the bolt, and I just pulled the screws out. So I finally started chiseling on the seal, and I could get a little piece of metal up, and then I could pull and hit this with the hammer, and now it's finally coming out. So there it is out. So now I just have to find the new seal, which probably hasn't been delivered yet. Here's 60 hours of work to get these parts all powder coated. They're turning out much nicer now. I wasn't using enough powder before, and so they're really, the ones I've done recently are really turning out much nicer. Very smooth, even coating. Just really happy with how that's turning out. Takes a long time because you have to sandblast them. Then I do a degreasing bath for 20 minutes. A zinc phosphate bath for half an hour or so, where I have to swish it around. Then I have to hang a few parts up at a time and powder coat them. Then I have to put them in the oven, let the oven heat up, let them cure for 20 minutes. So that whole process takes almost an hour. Then I have to let it cool down before I can take them out, and then I can put in a few more parts. And then a lot of these I had to put in twice, so you can double that time. It's a slow process when you have a regular oven and not much room to powder coat. Got the polyurethane bushings. It's the Moss kit for like $450. It's supposed to be everything you need, but of course when you get the kit they have a little note in there that if you want the bushings for the wishbones, that's a separate part number for another $100. So I have to order that now. Here's a part going back in because it didn't cover well around that flange. But once I get that done, I'm almost done with the gray parts. these parts are blasted and they're going to be done in black, so they're waiting. I don't want to change powder colors more times than I have to. I'll have to give them a quick sandblast again because they've started to rust already. Here's some springs before and after kind of the wire wheel section. So I wire wheel most of the stuff off, then sandblast, then degrease, then zinc phosphate, then powder coat and bake. The springs are going to go black, and then I have the bracket for the differential I'm going to do in gray, I think. And then I'm thinking I'm going to take the axles apart and probably do those too, the stubs anyway, where I can. Taking these clips off my U-joints on this axle. So this is a used axle I picked up, and it's got the good threads here for this top piece. My original axle must have been loose and it spun, and there's really nothing left of the threads. Somebody clamped a boot on with a hose clamp. So I'm going to try to change this stub axle with onto my good hub. These things were tough to get out. They're rusted in there. And so what happens is they break by the ear where it's deep into the groove. So I found that if I give them a heat them with the torch, it will then pop. One side will pop pretty easily, and then I just worked WD-40 in. I kept squeezing with the ring pliers to wiggle it and move it as much as I could, and then work the WD-40 in. And it worked on all of them except for one, which broke, and then I had to get a little piece that was rusted in there out. But heating it up and driving it with a screwdriver, I got that piece out. So now I got to press these U-joints out. Well, I thought these would be nicer, but as soon as I tried one of them, it broke. I was just trying to squeeze it together and it snapped. Then I found another one that was already broken, but about 5 of them came out pretty easy. The other 2 that worked well is I got the pliers here and I just kept squeezing these and spraying WD-40, and eventually it got to the point where the whole thing would move and then it would come right out. So if I would have done that before I pulled on the one that broke, I probably would have been okay. But even on that one, I was able to get in here like this and twist here and get some movement, and then work the WD-40 in, and eventually I could get the whole clip to rotate. And I got it to rotate so I could squeeze like this and get this edge pulled up with the pliers here, and then I could pop it out. So they came out fairly easily, but not quite as easily as I had hoped. So now I'm going to try and get this one apart. The whole reason is this cap is threaded, and it's supposed to thread on here, but this obviously spun and wore the threads down to almost nothing. So I have another axle, and I'm going to try to replace this piece so I have threads again, and probably replace this with the one off the old axle. You can't buy this cork seal anymore as far as I can tell. I wish I could replace it.